Anyway, that's it for today's video.
If this gets a whopping 5 likes,
I'll play the
original.
Bye.
G'day legends, Watery48 here. Now let me pose a question to all of you for a moment. What is the worst game you have ever played? Previously for me, I would have said Dustborn, a game I've previously reviewed on the channel. If you've seen that video, you'll know that the game was so bad that I actually couldn't finish it because it would put me in such a foul and sad mood after playing that my fiancé asked me to stop playing it. Well, today, ladies and gentlemen, we may have a contender for my most hated game I've ever played, Lords of the Fallen 2014. Not only is Lords of the Fallen 2014 one of the most infuriating, boring, unresponsive slogs of a game that I have ever had the displeasure of playing, it has the insulting price tag of $42. Seriously, for how old this game is and how notoriously bad it is, it really shouldn't be any more than $15 at the most. Hey guys, Editing Watery here, and I just realised you can only buy the quote-unquote Game of the Year edition for this game, but they did not win Game of the Year. That title went to Dragon Age Inquisition. The most I can find is that some magazines said the game was the best German game of that year. Hell, I had a look at the nominations, and as far as I could see, they didn't even get nominated for anything. Anyway, back to the video. First off, before I talk about the game's story or gameplay, I have to first talk about the people who made this game. City Interactive Games, or CI Games for short. These guys are infamous for making bad games to the point where for a long time they had the nickname Shitty Interactive. Most of their bad games are just your generic early 2000s shooter you've seen hundreds of times before. I mean, just listen to the names of some of these games. Enemy Front, Terrorist Takedown, SAS Secure Tomorrow, Sniper Art of Victory. Most of these games sound generic because they are. I do have to say though, they also made the new Lords of the Fallen, which despite some issues is a pretty good game, and I have heard their Sniper Ghost Warrior games are pretty good too. From what I've heard, the reason these guys have so many bad games is because for a while there in the early 2000s, they thought that quantity over quality was the best way to go. I mean, here's a list of all the games they've made. It is a lot compared to most developers. Anyway, let's talk about the game's story because it's the only thing in the game that's halfway decent. Now, I didn't actually beat the game, so a lot of my synopsis here is from the game's Wikipedia page. You play as Harkin, a prisoner who has been released from prison by a monk named Kaslo to stop the demonic forces of a god known as Adir, who once ruled over humanity with an iron fist before being banished to the Rogar realm. Adir is trying to return to the world and is sending his Rogar forces to be annoying, I guess. Yeah, from what I read, the game doesn't tell you how humanity banished Adir, and later on in the game Adir relies on you choosing to save him for one of the game's endings, which does beg the question, what are most of his forces even doing anyway? Overall, it's a cool concept with a very bad execution. If you've played the second game, some of this story may sound familiar to you, and honestly, the second game does a way better job at storytelling. Like for example, giving the Rogar the objective of corrupting those beacons which are being used to keep Adir at bay. In this game, it seems like the demons are just being sent to places for the hell of it. Now for the worst part of this game, the gameplay. This has to be one of the clunkiest feeling games I have ever played. First off, it is incredibly slow, which is usually something I wouldn't complain about in games, but this is slow to a fault. Dodging, attacking, and parrying are the core pillars of a good Souls-like, and in this game, none of that feels good to do. Dodging, even if you're light rolling, feels like it takes a millennium to complete, and I'm not even sure if it gives you iframes because sometimes I would take damage and die before I had even gotten halfway through the roll animation. Attacking is just as slow and clunky as the dodging. It also seems like if you and an enemy attack each other at the same time, you cannot cancel the enemy's attack, but they will always cancel yours. This becomes a major issue when fighting enemies with shields, as they only really give you an opening when they attack. This wouldn't really be an issue except for the fact that even when enemies attack, they will do full 180s to hit you, meaning that you can't even get behind the shield guys as they're attacking because they'll just turn around and shank you anyways. Parrying is also so slow that you will never be able to pull it off. I mean, it feels like I have a full 2-second delay from when I push the parry button and when the animation for the parry starts. It's ridiculous. Enemy placement in this game is also atrocious. Worse than Dark Souls 2's is. That's all I'm going to say about that. Now let's talk about the bosses. I don't necessarily think the bosses are hard, I think the game's clunky mechanics makes them hard. What each boss fight basically boils down to is finding which move the boss does or which spell you can use is easiest to cheese your way through the boss. These fights aren't fun or dynamic in any way, it's literally wait for a boss to do a certain move, hit the boss 2 or 3 times, then sit back for 2 minutes and wait for him to do that move again. If you try to actually go in and dodge every attack and counter when the boss gives you an opening, you will die sheerly because of how clunky and slow your character is compared to enemies and bosses. My breaking point was when I realised I had been playing the game for 6 hours and I was only up to the 4th boss. Apparently this game takes about 15 to 20 hours to beat, so I think I've seen enough to make a good judgment on the game. The game also has an ungodly amount of screen shake with no way to turn it off. Seriously, it feels like every time you do anything in this game an earthquake is happening. You walk and the screen shakes, you attack and the screen shakes, but by far the worst offender is the backstabbing. The screen shakes so violently when doing backstabs that it's hard to tell what's going on and even made me get motion sick at times. This is just a horrible idea. So, to sum it all up, this game sucks. I genuinely think CI Games saw the popularity of Dark Souls at the time and said, yeah, we can do that, without actually understanding the reasons behind what made Dark Souls fun. Anyway, those were my thoughts on Lords of the Fallen 2014. I stream this game on Twitch. I will show on screen and link in the description if any of you guys are interested in hanging out with me live. I don't plan on streaming every day, but when I do, I should start at around 7:30 Australian Eastern Standard Time. It would really help my sanity whilst playing through bad games, and I'd really appreciate it. Speaking of bad games, if this video gets 7 likes, I will play another bad game by this developer. But yeah, that's it for today's video. Bye.